Hi guys, this is me, TeacherFernando, and here I am back again for today's video. I'm reading the second story on Dubliners called Araby, as I told you on the previous video. So let's start reading. Here we go. Second story, Araby. For a few days, the bazaar has come to the city. It is an exciting place for a boy, with its air of Eastern magic and its stalls selling unfamiliar things. It is even more exciting if love is his reason for going there. North Richmond Street was a quiet street except at the hour when the school on the corner let the boys out. An uninhabited house of 2 floors stood at the end of the street, and the other houses stared at one another with brown, unemotional faces. The person who rented our house before us, a priest, had died in the back living room. Damp air hung in all the rooms, and the waste room behind the kitchen was full of old, useless papers. The wide garden behind the house contained a central apple tree and a few thin bushes, under one of which I found part of the priest's rusty bicycle. He had been a very generous priest. When he died, he left all his money to the poor and his furniture to his sister. When the short days of winter came, darkness fell before we had eaten our dinners. When we met in the street, the houses had grown dark. The space of sky above us was the color of ever-changing violet, and the lamps of the street lifted their weak lights towards it. The cool air bit into us, and we played until our bodies were warm and our faces were pink. Our shouts echoed in the silent street. Our playing brought us through the dark, moody paths behind the houses, where we risked being attacked by the rough boys who lived there, to the back doors of the dark, wet gardens. When we returned to the street, light shone out from the kitchen windows. If my uncle was seen turning the corner, we hid in the shadow until he had gone safely into his house. Or if Mangan's sister came out on the doorstep to call her brother into his tea, we stayed in our shadow and watched her look up and down the street. We waited to see whether she would remain or go in, and if she remained, we had to leave our shadow and walk up to Mangan's steps. She was waiting for us, her figure sharply outlined by the light from the half-opened door. I stood by the railings, looking at her. Her dress swung as she moved her body, and the soft robe of her hair moved from side to side. Every morning, I lay on the floor in our front room, watching her door. The curtain was drawn so that I could just see her, but I could not be seen. When she came out on the doorstep, my heart jumped. I ran to the hall, grabbed my books, and followed her. I kept her brown figure always in my eye, and when we came near the point at which our ways parted, I quickened my steps and passed her. This happened morning after morning. I had never spoken to her except for a few casual words, and yet her name made my foolish blood race. She was in my mind even in the most unromantic places. Her name came to my lips at moments in strange prayers and praises, which I myself did not understand. My eyes were often full of tears. I could not tell why. I thought little of the future. I did not know whether I will ever speak to her or not, nor did I know if I spoke to her, how I could tell her of my confused love for her. but my body was like a harp, and her words and movements were like fingers running over the strings. At last, she spoke to me. When she said the first words to me, I was so confused that I did not know what to answer. She asked me if I was going to Araby. I forget whether I answered yes or no. It will be a wonderful bazaar, she said. She would love to go. And why can't you? I asked. While we spoke, she turned a silver bracelet around and around her wrist. She could not go, she said, because she had to stay in her convent. She held onto the railings, bowing her head towards me. The light from the lamp opposite our door caught the white curl of her neck, lit up the hair that rested there, and falling, lit up the hand on the railing. It fell over one side of her dress and caught the white border of a petticoat, just visible as she stood there. It's all right for you, she said. If I go, I said, I will bring you something. What foolishness destroyed my waking and sleeping thoughts after that evening. I wished to bring to an end the boring days that remained until Saturday. At night in my bedroom and by day in the classroom, her face came between me and the page I was trying to read. I heard the word Araby calling to me through the silence which my soul desired. It surrounded me with Eastern magic. I asked for permission to go to the bazaar on Saturday night. My aunt was surprised. On Saturday morning, I reminded my uncle that I wished to go to the bazaar in the evening. He answered me sharply, Yes, boy, I know. As he was in the hall, I could not go into the front room and look out of the window for her. I left the house in a bad mood and walked slowly towards the school. The air was pitilessly cold, and already I feared what might happen. When I came home to dinner, my uncle had not yet got back home. I sat staring at the clock for some time. When its noise began to annoy me, I went upstairs. From the front window, I saw there were boys playing below in the street. Their cries reached me faintly, and leaning my forehead against the cool glass, I looked over at the dark house where she lived. I stood there for an hour, seeing nothing but the brown figure in my imagination, with the lamplight on the curve of her neck, her hand on the railings, and the petticoat below her dress. When I came downstairs again, I found Mrs. Mercer, a neighbor, having tea with my aunt. I had to put up with the gossip of the tea table for more than an hour, and still my uncle did not come. When Mrs. Mercer had gone, I began to walk up and down angrily. My aunt said, I'm afraid you may have to put off your bazaar for tonight. At 9 o'clock, I heard my uncle's key in the hall door. I heard him talking to himself and heard the coat stand rocking when it received the weight of his coat. When he was halfway through his dinner, I asked him to give me the money to go to the bazaar. He had forgotten. The people are in bed now, he said. My aunt said to him, Can't you give him the money and let him go? You've kept him late enough as it is. My uncle said he was very sorry he had forgotten. He said he believed in the old saying, all work and no playing makes Jack a dull boy. He asked me where I was going, and when I had told him a second time, he asked if I knew the song about Araby. When I left the kitchen, he was about to tell my aunt the first lines of the song. He gave me 2 shillings, which I held tightly in my hand as I left the house. I walked down Buckingham Street to the station and took the deserted train. After an unbearable delay, it moved slowly out of the station and crept along. When I finally got out, I saw by the station clock that it was 10 minutes to 10. In front of me was a large building which displayed the magical name Araby. I went in quickly, giving a shilling to a tired-looking man, and found myself in a big hall. Most of the stalls were closed, and I recognized a silence like that which fills a church after a service. I walked shyly into the center of the bazaar. Only a few people were gathered around the stalls that were still open. Remembering with difficulty why I had come, I went over to one of them and examined vases and flowered teapots. At the door of the stall, a young lady was talking and laughing with two young gentlemen. I listened to them. "Oh, I never said such a thing." "Oh, but you did." "Oh, but I didn't." "Didn't she say that?" "She did. I heard her." "Oh, there's a naughty little lie." Observing me, the young lady came over and asked me if I wished to buy anything. Her voice was not encouraging. She seemed to have spoken to me out of a sense of duty. I looked nervously at the great vases that stood like Eastern guards at either side of the dark entrance to her stall, and murmured, "No, thank you." The young lady changed the position of one of the vases and went back to the two young men. They continued their conversation as before. Once or twice the young lady glanced at me over her shoulder. I knew my stay was useless, but I went on looking at her stall to make my interest in what she was selling seem more real. Then I turned slowly away and walked down the middle of the bazaar. I allowed the coins to fall against each other in my pocket. I heard a voice call from the upper part of the hall that the light was out. It was now completely dark up there. Staring up into the darkness, I saw myself as a creature driven and laughed at my vanity, and my eyes burned with pain and anger. And that's the end of the story. Bye bye, take care, and see you. This is Teacher Fernando. I forgot to ask you is please support my channel. Give a thumbs up, write down in the comments, and of course subscribe to it. Thank you very much.